now in person is Leigh Williams, Chief Information Officer and Information Technology Executive from Brisbane Catholic Education. And today we're discussing the journey with AI. So Leigh, thanks for joining and welcome.
Thank you.
Now, Leigh, I'm aware that you've just recently jumped off a panel and you've come here to do our interview. So tell us, what did you discuss?
Sure. So there was a couple of elements to the discussion. Firstly was around our rollout of Microsoft Copilot M365 and the journey that we've been on, how we got there and what the main beneficiaries were of actually rolling out something like this. Being a data analyst session of the most recent one that I did, they were asking about the data and the proof of the data, right, which is great to be able to question the evidence. And we really talked through what we were seeing both from a teaching perspective and the workload reduction, but also from a student side in their social and emotional well-being as well. So then from there, it was really around what else can we do to keep furthering this work and what is 2025 going to look like for us and beyond.
So in the keynote today, I noticed that someone was saying in terms of education sector that leveraging Copilot, for example, how much productivity they got back, how much monotonous tasks were removed, etc. So what are your thoughts with obviously the role that you're doing in terms of how AI can help transform the education sector, but so any sort of insights you'd like to share?
Sure. So to me, and when you talk to any educator, they don't get into the profession to do admin work. They get into the profession to be with students. They love their students and care for their students. So by enabling technology that takes away the administrative load, the administrative burden, the planning burden that's placed on them, it gives them more time with students and doing what they're passionate about, which is teaching. So to me, that is the greatest outcome that we can see is teachers spending more time with students, because that in turn is going to help students grow and flourish both academically and socially.
And would you say if you were to zoom out, that would be the biggest opportunity in terms of leveraging AI in the education sector?
I think the biggest opportunity that we're still developing and working on that we've been piloting is directly to students. So what we've already been trialling that we're going to scale out next year is what we're calling hyper-personalization, because it is impossible for a teacher, if they've got 25 students in front of them, to teach a concept and teach it in 25 unique ways in 40 minutes to tailor it to where every single student is at with their learning, the modality of learning that they're used to, and if they have any specific learning needs, to cater for that, there's 25 individuals. A teacher can't be expected to do that, and they don't. So AI can leverage that power and say, well, give me the lesson plan and I will personalize it for exactly where every single child is at and give it to give their lesson in a way that's going to best suit their learning mode. So to me, that is just a game changer for how we can actually educate students.
That's an interesting observation. When I look back, when I finished school like 15 years ago, I remember being I was obviously more of an English student than I was maths. But I don't think I did well at maths because I had the same teacher still like year 10, 11, 12. And my parents said the teacher doesn't explain it in a way that Karissa understands. And I'm like, well, we can't change her for whatever reason. And I think like leveraging something like this perhaps could have changed my experience. Maybe I could have become a mathematician, who knows?
Yes.
But I didn't get that opportunity.
Yeah.
So in terms of my own personal experience, I'm just thinking it through as you're speaking, and I was like, I wish I had that opportunity. So what do you sort of see like moving forward in terms of, the impact that'll have on students now?
Yep. So I think first and foremost, engagement, because students are not going to learn unless they're engaged. So if we start with engagement and getting them just in a learning environment, whether that's within a school context or when they're at home or anywhere else. So that engagement's number one. And then secondly, engaging in the concepts, the knowledge and the skills that they are actually learning, and being able to have agency and voice over the learning that they're actually that they're doing. So for what we're seeing with students is that they are just taking AI and running with it. And so from something that, like I used an example before about, a junior secondary geography class learning about the rock cycle. Now, for a lot of students, that's not that fun or doesn't sound that fun. Sorry, geologists. But we can make it engaging and fun and to suit the learning of the student. And what we were seeing is that students were then going and learning even more about rock formations and plate tectonics and all these other things that they started learning about that weren't even part of what the teacher had put forward, but it was actually they were wanting to learn more because they were interested in it. So when you see that and see the depth of the learning that they're engaging in with the agency to even run it themselves, it was very powerful.
That's interesting because I think that now that you presented something, or that the school's presented something in a way that people are more interested in, it's actually furthered their engagement and they're going on that rabbit hole to even learn even more. So the other side of students being really engaged is perhaps people's concern around like cheating or leveraging AI to answer things. I think I've seen a lot of, I'm a millennial, but you've got like the Gen Z, there's a lot of content online of people now getting into their first job and in an interview and they've got AI or ChatGPT there and it's responding to the questions.
Yeah.
So what, is there concerns around that from your perspective?
Yeah, we had initial concerns around that. The way we tackled that was through a number of fronts. Firstly, open and direct collaboration and dialogue. So bring to us, what are your concerns? What are the things that we can go and test and run pilots on and determine, are these real fears or are they actually just myths that we can bust? In the concept of cheating, we actually busted that myth pretty quickly. So when we rolled out Copilot for students with senior secondary students, we found straight away they were using it for tutoring because they weren't interested in not knowing the concept. In fact, the feedback we got from students is they said, I don't want AI to build all the knowledge because if I walk away from AI, I don't have the knowledge.
True.
AI does. So how do I use AI to help me so that no matter where I am, I will always have that knowledge that I've learned or that skill that I have learned and be able to take it with me into my career or my personal life. So that was really powerful to hear that coming from students. And so when we looked at what they were using AI for, they were using it more like a tutor and asking it more in-depth questions. They were asking it to give them feedback on drafts or to look at different concepts, or if they were writing, say, a persuasive essay, they would say to ChatGPT or to any Gen AI like Copilot, they were actually saying, well, here's my version of argument. Can you generate for me a counter argument? And so just that they would even think to do that, it would generate a counter argument. That in turn would help make their argument better because they would go, oh, hang on, if that's a counter, I need to make sure I've addressed that in my own essay when I'm writing it. So there was a whole heap of examples like that in the way that they were using Copilot and AI to better help their own learning and their own essay writing. The other main area that we worked with was teachers themselves saying, well, if a student can cheat by using AI, maybe it's the assessment we need to look at in the first place. And so we need to reconceptualize what does assessment look like? So it isn't about who can write the best essay, but it's actually about what is the concept, what is the knowledge, or what is the skill that you actually want the student to walk away with and take with them for potentially the rest of their life. So once you get to the core of what is it you're actually trying to assess, then saying, well, what are all the different ways we could actually assess that? That's not just let's write an essay. And so it really helped change the mindset of a lot of teachers to go, I don't need to write it as an essay. An essay was more a way to scale out an assessment and easier to mark. But now, again, that AI can help me with marking, can help me with assessment. That's not a concern for me anymore. So yeah, I can be more creative with the type of assessment that I'm actually giving to my students.
So one of the things that when you were speaking that came to my mind is even when, like, going back to the maths example of when you would do a maths test, you'd have a calculator. So it's like 2 + 2 is 4, sure, but you suddenly show you're working out, which I would probably resemble to critical thinking.
Yes. So
people could argue, well, people are cheating in maths exams because they got a calculator.
Yes.
Now, Copilot or AI is a new, high-tech version of a calculator, but the thinking is still there in terms of how does you get to that answer? People still need to understand how they got there, how, to your point, how the data makes sense, how they can discern between if that is the right answer or not. So people are still so clawed up in perhaps removing that critical thinking when it's actually still there. Even Absolutely. To ask a specific prompt, the critical thinking still needs to be there.
Yes, correct. And prompt crafting is such a great example because it's now so prevalent that it takes a very sophisticated prompt to develop a good sophisticated answer. So just in the development of that prompt shows critical thinking, shows higher order thinking skills from that student and then be able to put the prompt in a meaningful, palatable way that a large language model can actually understand and not generate some, nonsense answer or hallucination. So just the generation of the prompt itself can actually show critical thinking and analysis by the student.
So zooming out, we've obviously spoken about teachers and then students. What about like the curriculum?
Yes, yep. So this is to me what's exciting because there's so many different ways that you can implement a curriculum. So yes, we have an Australian curriculum that we all utilise, but it's always up to the teacher how that curriculum is actually taught. And so that's where the power of AI really comes in because it gives so many more avenues of how. And it doesn't actually all have to be the same way. Just because that student handed in their assessment or showed their ability to do a particular skill and they did it by generating a PowerPoint presentation, the next student did it with an oral presentation, and the next student built a 3D model. They all could be doing the same skill and concept, but just delivering it in completely different ways. And so AI can still ingest all of those assessments, still assess them and say, yep, that child actually does have that understanding or that level of expertise or mastery over a concept, even if they have handed in what looks like 3 different assessments.
So would you say there's still a little bit of a understanding on how to map out the curriculum, what this looks like? To your point, like, do we need an essay? Would you say that's still evolving in terms of the education sector and how to leverage AI to instill that critical thinking is still there? People aren't cheating necessarily when they're leveraging AI.
Yeah. So there's probably a couple of things. There's firstly perception, and it's getting past that barrier or hurdle of what are my own biases that I'm actually bringing to this, and what are my thoughts around AI, and what's actually real and what's fact and fiction. So how do we help change perception around what's possible? Then from a teaching perspective, then how do we essentially motivate and entice and engage educators into the space to even start thinking about it and running pilots themselves in classes to say, well, let's try using Gen AI to do this. Or if we're going to do critical thinking in the classroom, like the example I used before on persuasive arguments, okay, I want you to get up and give a debate, but guess what? You're going to debate against AI. And so here's the context of the argument. You're in the for, AI is going to be in the against. Let's go. And so it still has all the critical thinking elements there. That student could take that away and practice that at home. And that would be tutoring. That's not cheating because they're actually just getting AI to help better their own argument that they're trying to deliver. So to me, there's lots of ways that we can still bring educators into this journey and into this fold. Are we 100% there? No, of course not. And it's still going to take some time. You've still got, like any implementation of new technology or new inventions, you've got the innovators leading the way. You've got the pragmatists who want to see the data. And so, yes, we've been releasing as much data as we can on our outcomes. And then you're always going to have the laggards. But what we're trying to do is have the smallest group of laggards possible, and how do we get them over the fence as quickly as possible so that we've created a movement. And once we create that movement, it's almost like you know you're going to be left behind if you don't get on that bus with us. So that's what we're working towards, is what's the movement we can create around this.
So do you think the laggard group of people is diminishing?
Absolutely. Absolutely. From what we're seeing, even from 6 months ago to now, from the questions I get from principals or teachers directly compared to the questions that I'm getting now are chalk and cheese. 6 months ago, there was some fear around it, lots of questions about data, show me evidence. Now the question is around, can I use it for this? Can I use it for this? Can I use it for this? And so they're now pushing the boundaries. And as a technology expert, we're going, these are great questions. How do I set up a safe and secure sandpit for you, or put up some safe guardrails so that I can just let you run and innovate with this? So it's really has flipped from where it was even just 6 months ago, just by the types of questions I'm getting asked.
So Leigh, we are running out of time. However, I do want to flip to one last question for you, would be around security side of it.
Yes.
So this is obviously top of mind. I know it's Microsoft #1 priority. This is a cybersecurity podcast. So I'm really curious, like, what comes to mind on the security side of things, specifically to the education sector?
Yes. So, and look, I will preface this to say that we just didn't get here by happenstance. We are on the end now of a 3-year cybersecurity uplift. So from 3 years ago, like a lot of organisations faced when a lot of cyber threats started coming in and being more prevalent across our markets, on top of our cyber insurance renewals, we needed to do something more with cyber. So we've just at the end now of a huge cyber uplift program across the board, regardless of AI, just everything across the board for us. So we've got a much better cyber posture. That coupled with us building over the last 2 years our data governance and our data frameworks as well, and how our data interacts with other pieces of data. We've been doing that for a couple of years. So we're in a very good position now that we were not in, I would say 3 years ago, that has now helped us leverage AI into the future. In terms of security specifically now for us, there's 2 elements, because there is still the security that we need to put around our data, because we are talking about children. And when you're talking about medical data, when you're talking about court orders and things like that, those have to be held absolutely secure. And so they are still held absolutely secure and encrypted across all of our platforms, so that just a general AI prompt will not surface that. And so we've ran significant tests and a lot of penetration tests around that. Then everything else, we're saying, well, what are the guardrails? Where do we want AI to search and where do we not want it to search? So let's just start putting up guardrails. And I talk about it in guardrails, not barriers, because we say, we still want you to go and innovate. But here's the lanes that you need to play in. The last side to me is the human element, that at the end of the day, we still very much say to anyone, any of our staff, and say, if that AI has generated, say, an email for you to send or whatever it is, you still hit send on that email. It is still your email. It is still your ownership over what you do with that. Sure. If AI generates a lesson for you, you're still the one that goes and teaches that lesson. So it is still your lesson, your accountability over that. So, and I've even heard Microsoft themselves talk about AI will get you about 80% of the way there.
True.
The other 20% is the human element and even the relational element, because teachers know their kids best. And so they still want to put their flavour on things, which is great. They still know that, yep, I was going to teach that lesson and AI, that's a great lesson. But I know I've got a child who has just walked into my classroom who last night their parents have just gotten divorced. And this kid is walking into my classroom emotionally unsettled and emotionally unstable. I can't teach this lesson that's been given to me, no matter how good it is. I am going to work with this child of where they are at socially and emotionally first, so that they are safe and secure. Then I can get on with my teaching. That would be very hard for AI to ever replicate that.
True.
So to me, security comes at the foundational level, putting in those guardrails, but over the top, we've still got humans there making sure that everything's okay and what is delivered is still in the best interest of the child.
And just to close out, do you have any final thoughts, or closing comments you'd like to leave our audience with today?
I would like to, I guess, challenge people to say, I get asked a lot around, well, why go with this? Why are you doing this? Why are you doing that? And my challenge back is always, well, why not? So that's probably what I'd leave people with, is to flip your thinking and say, why do it? Well, why not? And what's the risk of actually not doing this can actually be just as good a use case as why you would do it.